it's time for college basketball to get truly wild. We've got lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. Plus, of course, some birds, reptiles, people, and pretty much any other noun that you can think of. Well, 64 of the top nouns in the nation will be coming together soon in the one and only March Madness. Now, only 3 of the preseason top 10 are still there now. We've seen some big leaps and some massive collapses. The resumes are all but complete, so it's time for our panel to take a shot at what's ahead. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I am Drew Fry, your host, and I am joined by Jack Grossman, Michael Tilka, and Dylan Wallace. Welcome to the show, everyone, and we'll just get started by taking a big look at the season so far and really what are these top conferences. Jack, I'll go to you. That have emerged so far this season as really being the powerhouses.
Well, conventional wisdom has been the Big Ten all year long, as they're going to have the most teams that make the tournament by far. 9, 10, possibly even 11 teams from that conference making the field. I'm going with the Big East. When I look at a conference, I want to see how many teams can potentially win the national championship out of a conference. And I look at the Big East, and I wouldn't be shocked if Villanova, Seton Hall, Creighton, or even, hey, Marquette makes a run. You have 3, maybe 4 teams that could legitimately get hot in March, make a Final Four, make a national championship, and that's more than really any other conference. Plus, there is some depth in there also. I mean, DePaul just beat Marquette on Tuesday night. So you see a lot of depth plus the talent up top.
I'm going to go with a little bit of a mid-major answer on this one.
Okay.
The one that's really stood out to me this year has been the West Coast Conference. So often
But it's not the best.
It's not the best conference, but it's a conference that has definitely become better as the seasons progress. And it's one that stood out to me because you took my answer, the Big East. And I'm sure Dylan's going to go with the Big Ten on this one, so I'm trying to be easy on him. But I'm going to go with the WCC because this is a mid-major conference that's legitimately going to get 3 different teams in the big dance this year. The addition of BYU into this conference this year has really bolstered that. And then obviously the 2 powerhouses with Gonzaga being the dominant force they are out of the Northwest, and then St. Mary's being one of the most consistent programs we've seen over the past decade. So a really nice thing to see a mid-major madness or a mid-major conference not only get 2 teams but 3 teams in the tournament this year.
It could be mid-major.
And it could be mid-major.
Yeah,
madness.
We don't know. I'm San Francisco.
Well, I mean, like on the terms of mid-major madness, 3 of the top 5 overall seeds in the tournament are likely going to be from mid-major conferences.
Yeah.
So it is very much a mid-major madness type of year in college basketball.
Outside of the mid-majors, Dylan, what do you have?
Well, you guessed it correctly. I'm going to say the Big Ten. And I know the Big Ten kind of has this, this kind of, it's funny because they say, it's so competitive within itself that when you look at them nationally, maybe they're not as good as maybe Jack was alluding to because he thinks the Big East teams can make a run. But honestly, there's currently 8 Big Ten teams ranked in the top 25. That's the most there's been in a few years. And Jack's right. I mean, they're going to have the most teams in the tournament. And I think if there's, a team from a conference that you don't want to run into in the NCAA tournament, it's the Big Ten because they've gone through that, gauntlet of the Big Ten conference, so physical and so, grind. It's such a grind in the Big Ten. And I think, when it comes to March, that's what you kind of need, and I think the Big Ten teams, they play 20 games, in the conference, and they're ready. They're prepared for March, and I think, that's definitely the powerhouse conference, and it's proven all year long.
And speaking of powerhouses, we've seen it's seemingly a lot of parity throughout this season as any team can get upset on any night. But is there a top tier? I mean, there has to be someone who's at that level. I mean, out of the past, it could matter because out of the past, I think, 5 seasons, only one non-1 seed has gone on to win the NCAA tournament, and that was a 2 seed. So, I mean, that this might matter. So, of those top-tier teams, if there is one, who do we really need to watch out for?
I don't know if there's a top tier. Usually you can pinpoint a few teams every year and say, these are the favorites. But this year's been so crazy. I mean, there's been so many upsets, and it's just been hard to predict. I think though, if I can name one team that maybe is kind of a little higher than everybody else, I would have to say Kansas. They're currently number 1 now, but really the season they've played solid all year long. And with Azubuike and Devon Dotson, I mean, that front court, back court combination, it's going to be hard for teams to beat them. And then you bring in Isaiah Moss who can shoot the 3 ball. I mean, I think their team, I know, Bill Self in Kansas, they don't always do the best in the NCAA tournament. But, I think with the way the regular season has gone, I mean, if you're going to put a tier, I think Kansas is right now at the top. But I don't think you can name 6 teams and say this is a top tier. I just don't think that's.
No, I disagree with you there, my friend. Like Jack mentioned earlier, you have 3 really impressive mid-major teams in that top 5 spot. Plus, you have a really impressive Baylor team also coming out of the Big 12. So I would say the top 5 and this top tier that I would see across the landscape would have to be Kansas, Baylor, San Diego State, Gonzaga, and Dayton. I would throw those 5 teams really in the top tier, the ones that have been the most consistent, that have been the most upset prone. I understand that San Diego State lost to UNLV not too long ago. Baylor loses to TCU on the road. But those are really their only bad losses. I mean, the other losses we've seen, it's been Kansas against Baylor those 2 times. They faced each other in conference play. But those 5 teams have really stuck out to me and been the most consistent, the ones that I would put on the top of everybody else. Now, granted, when it comes to March Madness, it can be anybody's tournament. You have an off day, you're out of there. But I would say those 5 teams are on that top tier.
And here's the thing. If we're all those teams other than Kansas, you can pick specific holes in their resumes. And for 3 of them, really, for Baylor, San Diego State, especially, it's that they aren't playing their best basketball right now. If this was the type of tournament that rewards someone who plays great the entire season, I could maybe get on board with that. But when you look at their performances lately, yes, San Diego State only has the 1 loss, but they've been struggling in other games as well since that loss. They almost lost to Nevada a couple weeks ago. Heck, even on Thursday in the quarterfinals of the Mountain West Conference, they almost lost to Air Force on a neutral court. Air Force! I mean, come on! I mean, you can't say that and say they're on the same level as a Kansas team that has 1 loss since the calendar turned to 2020, and that loss was to a top 5 Baylor team, which, by the way, Kansas avenged that loss by winning in Waco. When Baylor won at Kansas, Kansas didn't play that 4-out around 1 with Azubuike. They were still playing 2 bigs at that time. They were a different team back then. And Baylor, since that Kansas team, they haven't been the same team either. They lose at TCU, and they barely beat Texas Tech. So Baylor and San Diego State aren't playing their best basketball. Dayton's a team that I love to watch. They're extremely fun, but they've played 2 legit teams all year, and they lost both of them, Kansas out in Maui and Colorado back in December. So to me, I can't put them on the same level as a Kansas that right now is just demolishing virtually everyone.
And you do have a good point, though. It's about who's playing the best basketball right now. And so taking a step into the opposite direction, away
step
from
back,
the
you say.
a step back, yes. We do that on the basketball show.
That's right.
But going in that direction on some of these teams that aren't considered these national threats, definitely aren't top tier by any means. Who's playing their best basketball right now and could potentially put together a Cinderella run?
I mean, there's a little bit of cop-out because they're going to be like a 5 seed, but BYU is a great option here just because they are the only team to beat Gonzaga in the last couple of months, and they're a team that they'll be like a 5 seed, just not many people are going to pick because, it's BYU. That's not the name brand there. There's not Jimmer Fredette there anymore. But if you're looking for like a more classic Cinderella, a team like Vermont, maybe East Tennessee State would be the big one. They went on the road and beat LSU back when they were playing better basketball than the Tigers currently are. So that's a really big time win. Assuming they can win the SoCon and get that auto bid, I think that'd be a really fun like 11 or 12 seed that could possibly win a couple of games in the field.
Drew, I got 3 letters for you, and those letters are UNI. I'm going with the University of Northern
Shocking.
Iowa Northern
Oh,
Panthers.
boy.
UNI fight.
Homer.
Of course, I got to go with them. They have been one of the most impressive mid-major teams outside of those 3 that I mentioned earlier, Eastern Tennessee State being another great pick. But it's a team that's really stood out and been impressive to me. Number 2 in the entire country in effective field goal percentage, one of the best offenses you'll see in the entire country. 4 starters that are near that 40% mark from three-point land. And A.J. Green, no, not the wide receiver. A.J. Green, the basketball player, has been incredibly impressive, one of the best that the Missouri Valley has to offer. Sure, some bad losses, speaking with the Loyola Ramblers, losing to them in overtime in Chicago, losing to Indiana State, and a few rough losses there, but they do have experience against Power 5 opponents. They beat South Carolina. They won on the road against a really solid Colorado team in Boulder. I'm really liking what the Panthers have to offer.
Now, Jack, you listed a bunch of Big East teams, but you didn't list Providence, and that's who I'm going to pick for this.
Would Providence qualify as a Cinderella, though? I get
They're not going to be a high
fire.
seed. They're not going to be a high
You
seed.
did pick a 5
I
seed
think-
potential.
But I picked BYU.
Yeah,
though.
exactly.
I picked BYU, though.
I think what you're getting at is maybe because Providence is more of a known name, so you don't maybe consider them Cinderella. But I think just, they're not going to be a high seed, as we've said. And I just think they're playing so good right now. I think they've had, 5 or 6 top 25 wins in the month of February. And, Ed Cooley, their head coach, he said, at the start of the season, he was too busy concerned with making guys happy. And it wasn't really working for them. And now he's kind of just gotten back to what he called, Providence basketball. whatever that may be, whatever you want to call Providence basketball. That's what they're doing right now, and they've just been on a roll. And they're kind of receiving votes for that top 25. But I mean, they are rising in the Big East, and I think come tournament time, they're not going to be too high of a seed because all the Big East teams have better records, conference records than them. But Providence is right now playing as good as anybody in the country, I think, and I think they can be very dangerous come tournament time.
Yeah, definitely. And there's still a little bit of time to figure that out before we get into the NCAA tournament. Meanwhile, there is still a little bit more of our show. So coming up after the break, we'll hear from Meredith Struewing, and we've got even more basketball when we come back. So make sure you stick with us.
Welcome back to the Toss-Up. With so much talk about March Madness and teams clawing their way in for a tournament bid, one could beg the question, how did this popular sporting mega event really even get started? I'll answer that for you and then provide some fun tidbits along the way. So first thing you should know, on March 27th, 1939, the University of Oregon defeated The Ohio State University 46-33 to win the first ever NCAA men's basketball tournament. At first, only 8 teams were invited to participate, but that number grew steadily until a 68-team format was unveiled in 2011 and is still used today. UCLA has won 11 NCAA men's basketball championships, the most of any school. Coach John Wooden won 10 of those titles, the same coach who, if you didn't know before, began every season by teaching his players how to tie their shoes and put on their socks. No, I'm not kidding, and neither was Wooden. Kentucky is in second place with 8 titles. North Carolina is next with 6, followed by Indiana and Duke with 5 each. And it's a safe bet to make that number 1 seeds will make deep runs in the tournament, since only one number 16 seed has ever beaten a number 1 seed. That happened just 2 years ago in 2018 when the University of Maryland Baltimore County, or UMBC, shocked the Virginia Cavaliers 74-54, beat them by 20 points. And you've probably heard it before, but I can bet you won't stop filling out a bracket once I tell you this. No matter how well you know sports, your chances of picking a perfect bracket are 9.2 quintillion to 1, according to UMKC math lecturer Ari Bavel. In fact, you're more likely to be mauled by a shark than nail this thing. But no matter if you're tearing up your bracket after the first round of the tournament or just enjoying the Cinderella teams that always appear, one thing is for certain. College basketball truly comes alive in March. Drew, back to you.
All right, thanks, Meredith. And so now, back to our panel. We're getting to get into this new game. This is called Winners or Losers. It's very simple. I'm just going to ask you for potential winners, teams that have sort of exceeded, or players that have exceeded expectations, and then the losers, the players that have sort of faltered. Also, a little stipulation, I don't want you repeating answers, so we are going in a particular order, and you will not be able to repeat a previous answer. So, Jack, we are going to start with you. Which of the teams this year would you constitute as a winner, someone who really stepped up when it didn't look like they were going to?
I feel really tempted to take Wisconsin, but I'm not, because I feel like someone else will. So I'm going to go with Florida State, a team that was not picked to finish in the top 4 of the ACC, that was not in the preseason top 25, and despite getting absolutely killed in Bloomington, which still makes 0 sense,
Not at
have
all.
been absolutely phenomenal all year. If they beat Boston College at home on Saturday, and Virginia beats Louisville in Charlottesville on Saturday, which are both very real possibilities, then Florida State's not only going to win the ACC, they're going to win the ACC outright. This is a team that, after losing Kabengele, Christ Kumaje, 2 of their 3 best players last year, has really done things by committee. Devin Vassell's taking a huge step. Trent Forrest has been really good. MJ Walker was great in a comeback win over Notre Dame on Wednesday night. So this is a team that has so many different guys that can beat you and is uber athletic, uber talented, and just really fun to watch. And they very well could be a 2 or 3 seed on Selection Sunday and a team that can make a Final Four.
I think the team that's really stood out to me when you consider their preseason expectations has been the Michigan Wolverines. Heading into this year, not a lot of confidence in the Juwan Howard hire. Guilty as charged with that one. I wasn't sure what exactly they were going to be able to accomplish this season. And to see the early success that he's been able to get them through so far, getting them to the top 25, a lock for the tournament right now, is something that I don't think I would have expected out of this team this year. Very impressive overall. Xavier Simpson is still one of the best point guards. Even though there are so many great point guards this season, he's definitely one that's been overlooked, one of the most veteran players in all of college basketball. So I would say the Wolverines have very much exceeded my
Michigan's fading, though. I mean, yeah, they resurrected it for a little while, but
considering that their expectations were about as high as my socks,
feel like
I mean, come
you're
on.
making too much. People expected Michigan to be in the tournament this year.
Oh, no, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No,
they
did not.
They brought back Xavier Simpson and Isaiah Livers.
They lost one of the best
Devon
coaches in
Parker.
college basketball, and they replaced him with someone who didn't have any experience prior, and he's done a great job.
The question with Juwan Howard was never, what's the team going to be like this year? It's, can he be able to build Michigan to keep the
And he's got him ahead of schedule. That's what's impressed me.
So before we
You're
lose a
missing
little control of this, I am going to send it over to Dylan because I feel like he does deserve a chance to answer it. So,
Yeah.
Dylan, which team is surprised?
Hey, Dylan, what's up?
I'm going to stay in the Big Ten, and I'm going to go with Wisconsin. It was funny, the very first Big Ten game Wisconsin played was against Indiana. So I was at the Kohl Center, and it was December 7th. And there were people, like faculty of Wisconsin, and they kept telling me, this is the worst team we've had, ever. I was like, oh man, this was, keep in mind, in December they were 5-5 in non-conference play. They really struggled, had some really bad losses. But all of a sudden, this team has just turned things around, and give Greg Gard a lot of credit. They've made a run, and on Saturday they're going to be competing for a share of a Big Ten championship, their first one since 2015. And they're 24 in the nation. They're sure in for the tournament. And they had a lot of weird things happen with their roster as well. Kobe King transferred. Brad Davison was suspended for a little bit. But now all of a sudden they're firing on all cylinders. Nate Reavers is playing great. Demetric Trice and Brad Davison, they've each hit over 16 three-pointers in the last 6 games for them. And Micah Potter, who wasn't available in December due to transfer rules from Ohio State, he's now playing, and he's playing well alongside Nate Reavers. And, this Badger team, once being told to me is the worst Wisconsin team ever, is now all of a sudden a dangerous team come tournament time.
All right, and so we're going to try and speed this up a little bit, but I'm going to send it back to you. Which teams do you think really faltered, just did not meet their expectations?
I'm going to say Arkansas. They kind of play like the Houston Rockets small ball style, and they were really hot. December, early January. I remember going into that Kentucky game. There were high expectations. Eric Musselman is obviously first-year head coach there. And they just kind of really, really declined over the last month and a half, really. And yeah. I don't know. Tournament, I think they might be on the bubble. They're kind of struggling right now.
I think they're on the outside looking in.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's just, it looked like they were going to be, one of the top teams in the SEC, and now all of a sudden they might not make the tournament.
All right, Michael, what about you?
I think for me, it's got to be the Virginia Cavaliers coming off a national championship year.
That's even worse than
oh my God, are you going to let me talk? Good Lord, are you my mother?
Jeez,
Jack.
God.
The reason why it stood out to me was because so early on, I thought this team had some capabilities. Obviously, a lot of really talented lost talent, but with a weaker ACC this year, I thought that they had an opportunity to, be somewhere better than they are right now, currently sitting on the bubble, inside looking out, a lot better spot, but I had a little bit higher expectations for the Cavaliers.
If this was December 1st, both of your takes would be phenomenal and on point, Tilka. So much has changed since that time, though. Virginia's not only on the bubble. I'm getting there.
Okay.
It's not only on the bubble. They could be like a 6 or a 5 seed in the tournament. They have resurrected 180 their season. I almost chose them for the last part of the segment we did. That Virginia could win the ACC if they beat Louisville on Saturday. How is that completely underwhelming when they lost 3 guys to the NBA draft on a team that won a national title? Just get out with that. Anyways, a team that underachieved, I'd say North Carolina, even though Cole Anthony got hurt, there's a little bit of excuses built in. There's 6 teams under 500. They're North Carolina. They got to be better than that.
Okay, so now we're going to get into our quick-fire rounds here, and we're going to jump right to one specific player. We apparently need to ease off the teams.
Yeah.
But one specific player, if your season is on the line in March Madness, who is that player you want carrying your team, Jack?
Peyton Pritchard, he hits the biggest shots.
That was my pick.
All the time. At least we agree on something,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah, finally.
There's no clutcher player in college basketball than Peyton Pritchard. Hit the dagger at Michigan, the dagger at Arizona. If you're in the Final Four, NCAA tournament with the game on the line, that's who I want with the ball.
Yeah, that's exactly who I'd pick, but obviously no repeats on this one, so I'm going to go with the player that I've enjoyed watching the most and has come up in so many big moments, and that's been Miles Powell. The way he's been able, and I took Dylan's pick. Sorry. But the way he's been able to carry Seton Hall this year, they've been one of the most impressive teams, one of the most exciting teams, has a really nice supporting cast around them. But if I can't give the ball to Peyton Pritchard, I'm pretty good with giving the ball to Miles Powell.
All right.
Man.
A third pick down there? I'm sorry
Third
to do that
pick.
to
You know what? I've been a fan of this guy's whole career, and they are surging right now, and I just have to say Cassius Winston. Michigan State is on fire, and if you give me a list of all the guards in this season, I would take Cassius Winston over every single one of them. Just controlling the floor, he's a complete floor general. He will push their team, and late games, I want the ball in his hands. Maybe not even take a shot, but just to set up his team for really good execution. He's the guy I want the ball in his hands for.
Yeah. All right, so now last question, and this is the big one. Because of that, you can make your own answers. I'm not going to make it dependent on anyone else. But the national championship game, who is your champion, and who do they beat for the title? Dylan, I'm going to start with you.
All right. I'm going to say the Kentucky Wildcats.
Because you have a bet hinging on it.
No. I love the makeup of their team. I honestly do.
They can't shoot.
Jack, hold on. They have
Sorry.
Emmanuel Quickly can't shoot?
Yeah, the one dude.
Okay.
One guy.
There's Quickly. They got Maxey. They got Higgins. They have Nick Richards. 3-point specialist Nate Sestina just to get Jack riled up.
Yes.
And I just think they're on a roll right now. I mean, they just lost to Tennessee, so it was a bit of a tough loss there. Blew a 17-point lead, but I really like the makeup of that team in the tournament. I think they're going to be dangerous. I think Kentucky's the national champions, and I'm going to say they beat. I already mentioned them briefly. Michigan State. I think Michigan State's going to make a deep run in the tournament. So Kentucky, Michigan State, Wildcats come out on top.
Okay. Michael?
I'm really liking Michigan State in the way they're playing basketball right now. I think they're peaking at the absolute best time. Their supporting cast has looked so good. I think that Cassius Winston, like Dylan was saying, obviously all the accolades he's been getting this season have been absolutely deserved. I would pick them as my national champion right now. As to who they're playing, I could honestly see a Big Ten versus Big Ten matchup. I could really see Maryland also making a deep run because they also have a really impressive guard in Anthony Cowan. I love Jalen Smith and what he's been able to provide in the post, and they have a great supporting cast with him as well. And so I'm really liking Michigan State over Maryland.
That matchup is so even.
Yes.
Winston, Cowan, Tillman, Smith, and then all the wings, Rocket Watts, Aaron Wiggins. I mean, they're just so evenly matched.
Yeah.
They've already played twice this year, so a third time would be fun.
Yeah.
All right, Jack, floor is yours.
Yeah, I think Rocket Watts would be a big key for Michigan State. His ascendance into really being a really consistent player has been huge for them. I'll take the favorite because why not? Kansas, they have the best team of everyone. They have the most talent. They're balanced, something that Maryland and Michigan State isn't. And then I'll say they beat Seton Hall. I think Seton Hall, behind Miles Powell, behind Sandro Mamukavishvili, Romero Gill, one of Dylan's favorite players, I know, Quincy McKnight, they have all the pieces to put together. I think they finally break through, make a deep March run. I'll go with Kansas over Seton Hall.
All right. Well, there it is. You heard it here first. That will do it for our show. But thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to continue our discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you might have. So toss it up, find out if we'll catch it, and we'll see you next time.